Hi, welcome to the Business Class ESL Break Room. We're a company of passionate language trainers and coaches. We're here to share ideas to improve our skills and strengthen the training community. Come in for some inspiration, leave with tips to apply to your sessions today. Hi, and welcome to the ESL Break Room. So we're here today with something different, and I'm excited to share with you our guest, Ashley Griffiths, who comes from the ESL world, but has transformed his career to focus on online marketing and in particular video presence, confidence building for people in that area. So Ashley, welcome, and maybe you could share a little bit about yourself and let us know what you're here to help us with.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me, Sue. Absolute pleasure to
Delighted.
be here. So, yeah, and a very nice introduction as well. So, thank you for that. So, yeah, I help people with getting confident on camera. Because a lot of people, and it kind of surprised me, it was a happy accident really when I started on this journey. I was talking to people about I started doing videos, and then people would be like, "Oh, I hate videos." I'm like, "What do you mean you hate videos?" It's like, "I can't do it. I feel like really awkward when I get on camera." And I'm like, "Hmm." So that kind of piqued my interest. So I started creating tutorials and showing up online and advising people. And before I knew it, I had a business. So it was a really happy accident, really, because I was still working very much in the ESL space when that happened around the lockdown time. And I literally just started recording videos because I was bored of talking to
Amazing.
myself. I'm used to talking to people in front of a room, being in the classroom or before my teaching career, managing people, guiding people, emceeing events. I'm used to doing that. So being in a room with myself was, yeah, not so great. So I started recording videos, and here we are, 500 million videos later.
Well, it's your destiny,
Whatever it is.
maybe. There you go. So yeah, which is why we invited you here, because we thought you would be a great voice for us to help us, just kind of improve a few pointers on what we could do better, because it's not going away. We're all staying online and it's fun, it's enjoyable, but I'm sure we could all do one or two things differently and make a bigger impact on our learners and on our presentation.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think video is definitely, certainly this year, it's going off. It's been going off for quite a few years, certainly since TikTok came around.
Oh yeah.
I mean, videos online are nothing new. YouTube has been a great place for teachers to go and create a presence for a very long time. But then TikTok came along and it's completely changed the game. And every single other channel now is kind of playing catch up, as you see with Instagram Reels getting increased reach and exposure if you go down that route. Even LinkedIn now is showing a much more growth in terms of videos. Before, certainly even a year ago, 18 months ago, videos were not very common on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Did not get pushed. Now that's changing. And now would be a really good time to go to do videos on LinkedIn, because there's still not a lot of people doing them in
Did
the
you hear
grand
that,
scheme of
everyone? Good tip. Good
Yeah,
tip.
absolutely. Go now, people. Go now. Not 6 months. Do it now. Which would be my number one tip, really, when it comes to doing videos, is to do videos. Not talk about it, not think about it, not overthink it. Just start doing them today, because there's a common misconception that you need to have a studio, expensive equipment, a fancy camera, a videography PhD, a hair and beauty department.
Yeah.
You don't need any of this stuff. And certainly with TikTok now as well, raw, unfiltered, regular footage, people talking about everyday life
Mhm.
is great. It's people love it.
It's relatable.
It's massively relatable. And I
Yeah.
think people just get very hung up on the fact it's like, well, how should I show up? What should I be
Mm.
doing?
Mhm.
There's and they just start shoulding all over themselves
Yeah.
about that. And I think certainly in the ESL space, in the education space, my advice would be to show up as you are when you're with your students,
Yeah.
because the video is a great way to start building trust with your potential students on whatever platform you're showing up.
Mhm.
Because as you know, as we all know here in the education space, going into a classroom, especially if you're working with adults, teenagers as well, kids not so much because they're
Mm.
a hell of a lot more fearless than we are.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with teenagers, adults, that involves a lot of vulnerability on their part.
Mm.
So they need to trust that you are going to support them, nurture them, get them through whatever messages they're telling themselves in their head about the fact that they can't speak English or they can't do this, they can't do that. So if you're showing up as a familiar face, showing up in the style that you teach. So if you're quirky, if you've got,
Mhm.
if you have a very quirky approach, show up like that. If you're a very calm, nurturing sort of teacher, be like that,
Mhm.
because that's going to resonate with your students. If
Yeah.
it's working with the students you're working with now, that means that's the thing you need to lean into, because there'll be other people that appreciate that.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying is it's making me realize getting ideas as you're speaking, like we may be brought to having little reels of ourselves when we apply for work, even if
Mm,
we're working with a company. You could just say, here's a clip of what I do in session, so they get a taste of who we are. So thank you for making me make that jump. It might be a good tip for all of us to be thinking of. Do you have something like that? But if we could
totally.
bring it back even to the actual language session that you're working with someone more than even just promoting yourself,
Yeah.
would you have any ideas of what would you say are the top three don'ts or do's that you've seen
Okay.
people aren't doing?
Okay. So when you're setting up the classroom,
Mhm.
okay, first thing you really need to be aware of is where you're looking.
Mm.
Okay. So this is the challenge in the online space, really, because right now you're on my screen there. So if I'm looking at you on the screen, that's not going to look as it's going to look as if maybe I'm checking my mails or something and
Right.
not actually looking at you. So you really want to make sure that you're looking at the camera. And when you're setting up the camera, you want to make sure that it's as close to eye level as possible. Because if, say, for example, the camera is too low, so if it's like that, it probably won't work so well. But if the camera's too low and you're looking down on it, just that can make some people feel very uncomfortable, because they'll feel that they're being looked down upon. And they
Mm.
can also make them feel like, oh God, who's this person sitting on their perch, which can create a barrier. It can create resistance, which certainly I think in the education space, there may already be there because of the way that the teacher is sometimes positioned as the font of all knowledge.
Mhm.
And some
Which we
students,
do not want, or it is exactly
which
the
we
opposite of what we
which
want in
no,
our
absolutely
yeah,
not. I mean,
yeah.
we're all learners, we're all teachers, we're all learners. So definitely want to make sure you're setting up your camera so that it's close to eye level as possible, and you're looking at the camera when you're addressing your audience or
So
your,
can we
your group of
stop
students.
there,
Yes.
Ashley? And so correct me, because I know that I'm aware of that. I try to do that. And yet I know I can feel myself. I'm looking at this screen because you're on my screen and I am not looking in my little camera hole. So if I'm looking at you now here, what you're seeing is not quite, I should be looking here the whole time.
Yeah.
So everyone can see that difference. I've been looking at you here.
Certainly when you're talking, yes.
Yeah.
I
but I
think certainly when you're speaking now, obviously you don't have to kind of like stay fixated because you want to check in and
Mhm.
make sure that your students aren't switching off.
Right.
But that's where kind of the peripheral vision really kind of starts working in, and this takes a little bit of practice
Absolutely.
where, and this is something worth doing before when you are before you go live, or just as a practice, really switching into that peripheral vision, so focusing on the camera and
Mhm.
then expanding the vision so that you
It's
can start
tricky.
seeing things. So I can notice, even though I'm looking at this, I can't see your eyes as such because I'm not focused on them, but I can see your body language. I can see shifts in your body language. I can see if there's any sort of flickers, or if there's any sort of stuff like that going on. So it takes a lot of practice,
Mm.
but it's b- the, but if you do that over time, it really helps. It really helps.
I have to echo that because we, in my company, sometimes we need to evaluate trainers or how they're doing, and you see the difference, or if somebody's computer is on their table and they're looking down into it, and it really creates a different impression. And so you want it to be as connected as possible, and to have that moment where they know they're being listened to and looked at, even when we're not speaking.
Yeah.
Um, but I can see I need to practice as well. So thank you.
It's certainly it's a trick because naturally as humans we respond to the words we're using. Ultimately is a small percentage of our communication. We're
Mhm.
responding to what's going on with your eyes, with your body language, and even just tonality. But we're certainly in the education space. this I learned this certainly when I was out there, out in Asia, when people would say, like, one of the worst questions I think you can ever ask in a language classroom or in life, to be honest with you, is, "Do you understand?"
Mm.
Because yeah, depending on the situations, they might just exactly that close off or go, "Yeah, yeah, I understand," but their body language is just screaming, "No, I haven't got a clue," but I'm not going to admit that because people are going to think that whatever drama goes on in their head in that moment, whatever they're telling themselves. So yeah, being aware of the body language is one of the more challenging aspects, I suppose, of being in the online space. So making sure you're constantly, you know, subtle movements between the
Mhm.
camera when you're talking, and just being aware with your peripheral vision what's going on with the body language and listening for tonality is always a good way to go. And I'll just add like one thing else in terms of the camera setup when
Mhm.
it comes to recording videos. Try to make sure that whatever light source you have is in front of you, not behind you. Because
Mhm.
if you've got big huge mirror or window or something behind you, you can end up with a halo effect, which is very distracting. If you've got a big light on it, I always say in this room, it's why I bought a ring light for this. Like this time of the day, it's great because it's
Mhm.
light, and the window, I got natural light in the room. But after 3 o'clock around this time of the year, I might need to rely on the light that I've got in here, and then it puts half of my face into shadow. And I always say it goes all a bit Halloween.
Yeah.
So
Like, we don't want to scare our learners.
we certainly don't. So you want to
Yeah.
make sure that your face is lit up as
Mm.
much as possible. So light source in front of you. And again, be that whether you're recording social media content or running a class, anything, people want to see your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. If you're, because again, from believe it or not, from a psychological point of view, if you're in shadow, that people start thinking you're hiding something, and it can affect the trust
Mm. Yeah. And trust is key. So
massively.
excellent. Thank you for that. And you mentioned tonality. Could you say a
Yeah.
bit about that?
Okay. So the tonality is, yeah, it's it's funny. One of the things that I've been talking about a lot in my content recently online is about how people are getting a little bit upset about AI technology coming in and
Mhm.
it's going to replace the humans and all of that. And one of the things that you can use AI to do right now is to create videos, like video avatars
Yeah.
and audio on your websites, on your social media. But the tonality is flat for me. You
Mhm.
can mimic emotions, but that's all you're doing. You're mimicking, much like a parrot could do that,
Mhm.
or a baby does it when they're a kid, or a monkey might do stuff. It it's mimicking that, because the tonality of what we're saying, the tonality of how we react is based on lived experience.
Hmm.
So again, for let's take the example of the student that you've said the question, do you understand? And body language is like closed. Yeah, that short clipped response, defensive body language,
Mhm.
they haven't got it's gone completely over their head, but they don't have the confidence, be that in themselves, or maybe it's a cultural element, um to say, sorry teacher, I really don't understand, could you explain some more?
Yeah.
And the tonality and the body language tells you everything you need to know about, right, don't go fast, don't get, especially for new, if there's any sort of newer teachers here that are thinking, okay, I've got my lesson plan here and I've got to get from here to here, and if I don't, then I'm a terrible teacher because I haven't taught the lesson plan. That's right there is a cue for you to hold your horses, stop, and address the issue, whether they've specifically asked for it or not, because they've told you, look, I need some more help, but I can't tell you that directly.
Yeah.
And that's how being aware, and be it online, be it in the actual physical classroom, even if you're a manager or whatever in life, in a personal
Mhm.
level, being aware of those things straight away is your cue to maybe ask a different question, or
Mhm.
to explore in a way that's not going to expose them, but they feel listened to.
Yeah, that's so key. Thank you for that one. Now, something that I know is important is leaving that silence and leaving that space for people to think, which is something as trainers sometimes we forget, or we think we have to be talking to be working, or any number of things.
Yeah.
But yet video is faster than real life. How do you marry those two? Leaving space without maybe leaving too much space, or do you have any thoughts?
Oh, I most definitely do about this one. It's something that I've become quite passionate about in
Hmm.
recent weeks, and I've addressed on my content on LinkedIn, because silence is key into any type of conversation. And purely from a processing power, our minds, we need to let the words breathe,
Mm.
because when we're in terms of our processing, we're always a couple of milliseconds or seconds. I don't know the exact science here. I'm sure it's subjective as well, but we're always a little bit behind the messages we're receiving.
Mm.
So if you're just dropping an absolute truth bomb, or a question that is going to involve some processing power, and you just don't let that breathe, you are going to immediately put your audience into a state of confusion, chaos, and nervousness, and they'll feel pressured to answer, and they'll say any old thing just to answer, because it's like,
Mm.
and you don't want that at all in any situation. And to come back to your point, the with the videos, there is this style that has been popularized by people like Alex Hormozy and others, where it's very, very, very short, punchy, real quick cuts. where there's no pauses. Like what they do is they'll record a sentence, stop, another sentence, stop, another sentence, stop, and then splice it all together, which creates a really short, impactful video. But it also leaves lots of people dizzy because they're like, oh, what's happening next? So I encourage people in their videos to talk as they normally would. Now, obviously, if you're doing a social media video, you don't actually physically have an audience in the room with you. You are recording with an audience in mind.
Right.
So you don't want to leave a big, long 5-minute pause or stuff. But natural speech, how would you do it if you were doing a speech, or if you were going to ask a question in your classroom? You're going to leave that little pause there. So leave those pauses in your video, especially if you're just giving some like real food for thought. Couple of seconds, let that breathe, then go on. Don't feel like you have to create these 30-second hyper spliced, hyper edited videos that are out on TikTok and seeing them on LinkedIn as well now. I just, it's not authentic speech. It's not authentic speech. And it also alienates a lot of people as well, because it's, for me personally, from a videography point of view, I love those videos. From a audience point of view, I can't stand those videos because they make me dizzy.
Interesting.
So I like the technique that goes into it and how they're editing it. But I also know, just as a communicator, you lose people that way.
Right. It's not the medium for us in the space of encouragement and helping to bring people out and giving them the confidence to dare trying out a new language. It's definitely not.
No, I think it would be counterintuitive to do it that way, because you know, as we all know, when students come into the room, they're very paranoid about speaking.
Yeah.
And they also come in with a whole host of ideas about, I want to sound like you, teacher. I want to sound like I want to have a British accent. I want to sound like a native speaker, all of that stuff. And then they see these videos where you're like, they're gonna go, it just adds to the stress, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can imagine that. It's intimidating.
Massively.
Yeah. So yeah, but it is such a great reminder that we can and should leave the space for our learners to think, even if we're on video, even if it's a shorter time frame for on Zoom and we only have an hour with them, that space is valuable
Definitely.
time. Yeah.
The silence, you know, in regards to the online classroom, do what you would do in a regular classroom. I think for me in my teaching career, that one of the biggest revelations really was learning the power of silence. Because I know when I started my teaching career, I felt like if there was silence, then I felt pressured. So that was purely on me. But then as I went through and I learned more about teaching practice, methodologies, things like that, learning that power of silence, leaving things, giving time for ideas to kind of bubble up to the surface was really good, especially if you say like you're dealing with maybe beginner level, more beginner level student. I think if you're working with advanced levels, maybe not extended periods of silence because they're translating. We want to get them beyond that. But when you're with the lower levels, the lower intermediates, the beginners, that silence, just letting them kind of like figure it out, it can be a game changer for them.
Yeah, great. Can never be understated. Good. All right, so we've talked about tonality, we've talked about the speed and this white space. Anything else that you find that people need to hear that they may not be hearing elsewhere? in terms of improving their video presence.
Yeah, I think again, just I'm gonna circle back to what I said earlier on, really, about you don't need to have expensive equipment. You don't need to be all put together to be whatever your thoughts are on video about all these things you're telling yourself that you can't do it right now. Throw
Mm-hmm.
those in the bin, because if you've got a phone,
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a window, if you've got a message, then you've got all you need.
Yeah.
You've got all you need to create videos. And the one thing that I will say as well, if think about the sort of problems that are coming up in your classroom, the questions that your students ask you,
Mm-hmm.
the concerns, the things that are happening, the reasons behind why they're maybe not communicating, or not communicating at a level that they feel that they would like to, what's holding them back. All of that stuff right there is your content.
Mm.
Because if one person's thinking it, you can guarantee other people are. Because let's take the example of, I don't know, if you're working with corporate students, they come to you, they tell you that their English is terrible. So you work through them. I don't know whether you're doing presentation skills or meeting skills, whatever it is you're doing, and you work through whatever the program is. But ultimately, what's the problem usually is they don't believe that their English is good enough. They don't have the confidence in that, and they feel that they will be judged on their English. And this transcends boundaries. It goes across every single culture I've ever worked with,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether it's your first, your second, your third, or your 15th language. So if you're putting content out there that kind of addresses this and addresses the way that you help people kind of navigate this chasm,
Mm-hmm.
as it is for some people, um, immediately, by them seeing you, hearing you, and explaining that issue and how you can help them navigate it, you're building up trust. You're
Mm.
building up trust. And that for me is why video is one of the best ways to kind of promote, to build up an awareness with your audience, with your network, because people get to see you, get to hear your voice, get to trust you. And if you're constantly like, if they constantly feel like you're speaking to them, directly to them,
Mm.
they're gonna, when they're ready, when they reach out to you, everything that happens next in terms of the business process, the discovery call, the sales, whatever that, it just becomes so much easier for you, for them, because they already feel like they know you, they already trust you. So you don't have to kind of like, well, okay, go into full sales mode. Here's my Spangly course, because they're like,
Mm.
I know you can help me.
Yeah.
How does it work?
Excellent.
Makes life so much easier for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Indeed. It's all about the trust. And when we're in a session with them as well, we want them to just feel trust, you
Oh,
know.
absolutely. We need, if they're feeling comfortable, if they, if they feel comfortable in the classroom, those barriers are going to come down, that resistance is going to come down. They're more likely to engage and be curious, to explore the language and to push themselves outside of their comfort zones.
Yeah. It's funny, we just talking about the trust level. Recently, I saw a website of a client and just curious to see what company they're coming from, so I know how I could help them. And it was all video based. The instead of a panel of photos of the team or the staff, each one was a little GIF, they kind of animated little snippet, and each person was doing a motion or something to kind of identify them. And it was so powerful because I felt like, oh, they're nice people. Oh, they're pleasant. It really made an impact. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it does. And I think as well, just to let people know, um, with regards to video on website. There's just so many advantages to having videos of some description on your web page, on your website, be specifically your home page and your about page. Although you can put them everywhere if you want. It really helps with the SEO, your search engine optimization. So if you're trying to build up your website and get traffic to your website from your local market or your international market, whatever you're trying to achieve, videos are a very useful thing to have there because they increase the dwell time. So in regular English, that means the amount of time that people are spending on their website, which is an important signal to Google to say that this website's really good. People like this, people spend time there. So that is how one way to kind of get you moving up the rankings. So yeah, having videos there is a really, really, really good way to go with websites. I highly encourage everyone to get something on their website.
Excellent. Good thought there. Thank you. So I know you're a busy guy. Before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to leave anyone with just that one last tip that I think, people don't think of this? And we've talked about the eye contact, which I think is super important. I'm still working on it. Tonality, speed.
That's a good question.
Or maybe something to do with the space. I know I've heard someone else share with us kind of using the space you have. It's kind of your real estate on the screen.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I think when you're setting the camera up, you want to make sure that you are kind of front and center of it. Because if you're stood too far back from the camera, it makes you kind of look small. Which again, just from a perception point of view, exactly like that.
Yeah.
So from a perception point of view, it just, people will lose interest. So if you don't want to go the opposite extreme and like have an extreme close up or you've got your camera kind of down here and you're looking down on it and people get a nice little extreme close up of your nose. Avoid that. But just have it so that you are as close to the center. Very much, you want a little bit of headroom, but don't stand miles back from it, because again, that will affect the audio, and it will also affect the perception of how someone perceives you on the image there, which could impact how they receive the message.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. So how can people find you if they'd like to know more directly from you or get more involved with what you're sharing?
Absolutely. So I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. I'm always posting content on there. So if you follow Ashley Griffiths on LinkedIn, I'm very easy to find. I'm the guy with the who says awesome all the time. So very, very easy to find on there. You could come and say hello on the website, which is loudlyproudly.com. There's loads of resources on there. I write regular blogs. You've got access to the newsletter that I send out every week, and there's a video guide on there as well. And yeah, there's even a calendar link there if you want to talk about video content. I'm always happy to have a natter.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. This has been really helpful and very eye-opening. Pardon the pun. Sorry.
Nice.
That was spontaneous. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks again, and we hope to catch you again. You never know.
Been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us in the Business Class ESL Break Room, the podcast designed to bring business English trainers useful ideas, inspiration, and conversation that motivates. Follow us on Instagram at business_class_language and subscribe to the ESL Breakroom playlist on Spotify, Deezer, or Apple Music for new episodes. See you next time.